there, and welcome back to the GamecockScoop.com podcast, the official podcast of GamecockScoop.com on Rivals. I'm Caleb, as always, joined by Alan, we're here to quickly sum up what happened last week against Vanderbilt and preview South Carolina's matchup with Missouri, two college football playoff ranked teams here. So South Carolina is number 21 right now. Missouri is number 23. But South Carolina is favored. It opened at 13. I actually haven't looked since then, so I can figure that out in a second.
Now. Keep talking. This is great audio. 12. Yeah. It's at 12 right now, so a little bit of Missouri movement, but not much.
A lot on the line this week, and I saw you actually wrote about it a little bit yesterday. But obviously, Shane Beamer has never beat Missouri in his this will be the fourth try. South Carolina in general has lost, 5 straight?
5 in a row. Yep.
Yeah, 5 straight to Missouri. South Carolina has not finished above 500 in the SEC since 2017. If you win on Saturday, you lock that in. And they have, I want to say, never in the regular season beaten 3 straight ranked teams 3 weeks in a row. They did do it. I look back. They did it in like 2013, 2 to end the season and then a bowl game. But I don't think that they've done it 3 times in a regular season. We'll find out. But
the one I saw and I posted it Monday was, if you win this game handily again, it'll be the first time ever you've won 4 straight SEC games by double digits. Obviously, Oklahoma, you won that game by 26, A&M by 24, and Vandy by 21. So really, you're on a 20-plus streak, although you've never even won 4 straight by 10-plus in the league.
Yeah, and Missouri obviously has several issues heading into this game. Drew Pine is probably going to get the start at quarterback, although Brady Cook maybe miraculously will.
I got a feeling Brady Cook's going to be listed as questionable here in an hour and a half on the availability report, no matter what his actual status is.
No, totally. But just like some of the stuff that was going around on Twitter last week made it seem like he's out for a bit. Missouri also has lost their starting center for the season.
That's a big loss. I didn't mean to cut you off there, but that kid started all 9 games this year, all 13 games last year, all 13 games the year before. He was considered an NFL prospect. That's a huge loss for Missouri's offense.
On the flip side, they do have 2 of the most dangerous wide receivers in the country, in Theo Weiss Jr. and Luther Burden III. And despite Drew Pine's deficiencies, he can move the ball with his legs a little bit. And really, with those guys, it just takes 1 or 2 plays if you can get behind the defense or find a little crease on a screen or something. So they're still going to be dangerous offensively just because of the explosiveness. Defensively, Mizzou seems like maybe slightly weaker than they were the past few years. But maybe we start with some of the things that Beamer started with yesterday, where he was talking about the different phases of the game that South Carolina has come up short against Mizzou on. What can you tell me about that and some of the keys that he's seen lately that they need to flip this time around?
Yeah, Shane Beamer, very bluntly, someone just asked him in general about the Missouri kind of streak and what's been wrong there. He said they have 6 keys to winning every week. He didn't list them, but just knowing from what I've heard him talk in press conferences before, I think that's like win the penalty battle, win the fourth quarter, win the explosive plays battle, win the rushing battle. I don't know what the other 2 are. Win the turnover battle, and then there's a 6th one in there that I'm not thinking of. But he said in his 3 years here, if 3 times 6, that's 18. They've lost 15 out of 18 categories against Missouri. They've lost 5 out of 6 every year he's been here. So he mentioned they've been beat up physically by Missouri, both lines of scrimmage. I would agree with that from the 2 games that I've seen here in 21 as well, probably. I think this is obviously the way they're playing right now. You want to keep the momentum going. You feel like you're playing your best football this season in November. All the other stuff we can talk about, but I think these guys just really want to beat Missouri. You know what I mean? Something when there's seniors in this team that have been here for Vershawn Lee's a fifth-year senior who's never beaten Missouri. Like that, it's kind of crazy to say out loud, but it's true. And I think this is we talked about it in the summer when we previewed Missouri, just doing like the summer thing. This is a bigger game for I think a lot of people in that locker room than people realize. Just to finally try to get one of these guys.
Yeah, and they're going to need that focus to pull it off still, I think. I'm looking back at that 2022 game, heading into
Last time they were ranked, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. South
in the
Carolina
regular
ranked 25th. They were 5-3, and then of course fell flat on their face, lost 23-10. So they're very much trying to avoid that scenario again. I think that was the first season you and I were covering, and that was a rough Sunday morning podcast because I think we had kind of bought into them turning a corner, and then they very promptly fell on their face that week. So is there any chance after what we've seen the last couple of weeks against Texas A&M, last week against Vanderbilt, which we still haven't talked a ton about, but most of you have seen it and read about it at this point probably. Is there any chance in your mind that they come out flat the way that they did 2 years ago? Or do you think that there's just too much of a veteran presence on this team, too much hunger for the goals that are in front of them, and like you said, too much hunger to finally get over the hump against Missouri?
You can lose the game. I don't want to say it's a lock or anything like that. I think if you lose the game, it's not because you came out flat. I mean, I seem to remember in that game in 22, for just using that as the comparison, you gave up 2 long touchdown drives in the first quarter, maybe one in the first, one in the second. You kind of just were struggling to block. You weren't really doing anything. I don't think it's going to be a lack of energy kind of game. That was a very kind of sleepy crowd that day. I remember. I don't think you're going to have that at all coming off the way they're playing right now. Last SEC home game of the year, all that stuff. And no, I think you hit it right there with the veteran leadership, whether that's a Demetrius Knight, a Debo Williams. I don't know, pick any of 8 guys on that defense. No, I don't think they're going to come out flat. I think there are problems Missouri presents you, and we've talked about some of them, but I don't think it's going to be because of that.
So let's kind of transition into looking at it. Obviously, the last couple of weeks and really throughout the season, South Carolina has ridden its defense, and then the offense has come alive a little bit lately as well. Although if we look back to that Vanderbilt game, the defense definitely kept them in it early when the offense was still kind of struggling. Offense obviously turned it over deep in Vanderbilt territory, and defense immediately gets a turnover back. Do you continue to see the same style of aggressive defense, you think, this week against Missouri, even though you do have Weiss and Burden, who obviously, if you get a one-on-one matchup with, can win those one-on-one matchups? Or do you think that they're going to play it a little more conservative to try to keep those guys in front of them this week?
No, I think it's foot on the gas. I don't think the way they're playing defense right now, the last 3 games, really, I mean, most of the season except the Ole Miss game for first half, I think you just do exactly what you've been doing. I don't think you adjust because of the opponent as much. I think it's working too well. And I also think your corners have shown they can cover guys like this. Maybe not a team receiving core like what Missouri has, where even Mookie Cooper, their number 3's, a pretty big target, a weapon, but you did a better job on Ryan Williams than pretty much anyone else who's faced Alabama. I know he had the one big play over the middle, but you did a pretty good job on Juice Wells when Ole Miss was here. No, I'm thinking, I think it was 1 catch or maybe 2 catches for Dane Key when you played Kentucky even. I think you feel as good as you reasonably can about your corners in this game. So, no, I don't think you change anything. I mean, would you? I wouldn't.
No, I think you have to stay aggressive. I think that the team in so many other ways has fed off of that, and also fed off of the potential turnovers and just general disruption that happens, that even if you do give up a couple of big plays, you'll take that because you think it's going to even out by the end. I mean, you look at Drew Pine, he's got a 34.4 QBR right now in 2024, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He's completing 50-ish% of his passes. So actually a little higher than that, but last game he completed 50% of his passes. On the season he's at 59.8, but still nothing too terrifying there. So I think you probably like to think, especially with Mizzou being banged up on the front lines at center, like we mentioned before, um, that you can cause enough mistakes for it to be worth a big play here or there if that does happen.
Yeah, I think too. You can. We've talked about this in a lot of games this year. I think you can get pressure with four. I especially think you can get pressure up the middle with your defensive tackles. Um, Sounds like you might be getting DeAndre Jules back this week. I don't know if that's going to be a lot of play. Mazio Bennett returned last week, only played like 15 snaps. Might be that kind of thing, but I think you are going to maybe have him back. You still obviously have TJ Tonka Boogie up the middle there, Nick Barrett. So. Yeah, I think you can get pressure up the middle. I think you can make things tough for Drew Pine, or even if Brady Cook does play, he's probably not going to be 100%. And you try. I think it's just this is what Shane said yesterday, and I agree with it. Burden, Weiss, Cooper, they're going to get catches. They're going to. I would imagine there's going to be a lot of kind of short stuff, ball out of the hands quick, all that for Pine. You got to tackle. I think that's kind of all what it comes down to. If you tackle the way you have in the last month, I think you feel great about this. If you tackle the way you tackle against LSU, Luther Burden can take a 6-yard pass and make it a 60-yard play if he shakes one tackle. He's got that kind of speed. He's got that kind of elusiveness. So I think it's not even so much about actual coverage or busts or losing guys. I think it's more just you got to make sure you tackle in space against these guys.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. As far as one of the factors in covering these talented wide receivers, any word on DQ Smith and whether or not we'll see him this week or we'll see Peyton Williams again, who I thought looked pretty good in his first major action this year.
Yeah, no real word from Shane. He's kind of just said availability report. Clayton didn't have anything either today. That comes out, and I guess by the time you guys are listening to this, it will be out. But right now, still like an hour and a half, hour 20 minutes. It didn't sound like it was a long-term thing. It sounded like they were as confused as the rest of us. He got hurt not just in warmups, but like during their last stretch of warmups. He said Clint Haggard, the trainer, told him as they were walking off the field from warmups that DQ wouldn't be able to play, and that Clayton found out even later than that. So it sounds like it might have just been a freak thing, but we'll know more here soon.
Got it. On the offensive side, obviously Josiah Thompson, who did not play last week, had Tree Babalade step in. I thought
he played great.
Very well, exactly. And the PFF numbers have bared that out as well. I assume, Josiah Thompson, it sounds like is kind of questionable this week as well.
Yeah.
I assume you just kind of roll with Tree after the way that he played last week. And I think long term, you have to think about how to get both those guys on the field at the same time, assuming you keep both of them around into next year and all of that.
Yeah, I asked Shane almost exactly that. He didn't really have an answer long term. I think it depends on how this, the rest of this recruiting class shapes out and the portal class and how your offensive line looks going into next year. But yeah, I don't think they have any problem rolling Tree Babalade out there. Dowell Lawkins was very complimentary of him just kind of being ready when his number was called. And that's obviously a skill, right? It's just being ready when you need to be, even though he hasn't started a game this year. Yeah, I would not be surprised if Tree starts at left tackle. I think the bigger question is, I don't know, you probably wouldn't risk Josiah against Wofford if he wasn't 100%. But let's say you go into Clemson week with, I'm not talking about next season or a bowl game with opt-outs or whatever, but you go into Clemson week with Josiah and Tree both healthy. Do you try to play them both, or is that just go back to what you had working with Josiah? Or it's probably a better conversation for that week, but I think it's interesting.
Yeah, I agree. And also just from a roster management standpoint, within the era of the portal, there's the just like mental math too of if you plan on doing that next year, should you try to reassure both parties, that's going to be the plan the next year or whatever. Maybe that doesn't necessarily mean that they both have to start against Clemson or whatever, but either way, I think you're in good shape with Tree and at left tackle this week if that's the way it goes. Especially he just was mashing people on the edges in the run game a bit last week. Let's kind of use that to transition more into the offense. how do you see South Carolina's offense stacking up against Missouri's defense? Obviously, they've gotten a lot of sacks on South Carolina in the past. That game that we talked about before, where South Carolina came out flat, Spencer Rattler spent a lot of that running away from a very quick Mizzou defensive front. Do they kind of look the way that they have the past, I don't know, almost decade now, I feel like, or a little bit of a different look on Mizzou's defense this year?
Yeah, I think up front it's probably about what you're used to seeing. You know, they're quick, they can roll bodies, they're good at getting after the quarterback. I don't know if they have maybe the one game record like a Kyle Kennard. Johnny Walker Jr. is probably the closest thing for them, but they've got bodies and they're going to be a problem. I think secondary. Look, I don't know where they grade out numbers wise. I was going to look at that maybe tomorrow, but I don't think the secondary is as good as ones you've seen in the past for Missouri. You've seen between Rakestraw and Abrams Drain, I think were the two for first or second round picks they've had the last 2 years. I don't think there's a first round pick in Missouri secondary this year, or second round pick, anything like that. That being said, I mean, you mentioned it earlier. This is a very opportunistic defense. They won the game last week with a strip sack in the final minute against Oklahoma. They're good at forcing turnovers. They're good around the ball. And I think this is, again, it's kind of what we've talked about, but this is another week for Lenoris. He did have one turnover last week. You got to keep the ball out of harm's way. I think if you do that, you have an excellent chance to win this game.
Yeah. On the other hand, I think that they are a little bit exploitable in the run game as well.
Yep.
So
I agree with
that's
that.
kind of been the success story for South Carolina's offense since the bye week. Run the ball pretty well and then hit some big plays in the passing game. It sounds like that's kind of been the MO against Mizzou this year. Oklahoma, who South Carolina knows, struggled pretty mightily in the run game against South Carolina's defense. Score or rush for 122 yards last week, but that's also including 47 yards lost on sacks, so really more like 169 yards on the ground. And really late in the game, Oklahoma, that's how they were scoring their points, was kind of leaning on that run game. So I do think that if you can get Rocket Sanders going early, perhaps in the second half, you can kind of lean on that and pull away, which is what we've seen really both of the last 2 weeks against Vanderbilt and Texas A&M.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up too, because I think for everything else South Carolina is doing well right now, I think maybe the thing they're doing the best is they're getting better as games go on every week. I mean, throughout Oklahoma, you're up 21-0 in 6 minutes. That's kind of a freak circumstance. But A&M, you're tied at halftime. You win the second half 24-0. Last week, I think it's easy to forget, that was a 7-0 game at halftime last week at Vanderbilt. Come out, score, what was it, 2 of your first 3 drives the second half, or maybe it was both the first 2. End up winning that game by 21. And then even going back to the Alabama game, I know you lost, but you're down 14-0. You play better in the second half. You give yourself a chance to win there. I think this team, I think it's a credit to the physicality of this team. I think it's a credit to all the stuff we spent all summer hearing about. I know fans don't want to hear about it without results, and I get that, but weight room and conditioning and summer and spring ball and all that stuff, like I said, that fans don't really want to hear about on its own. But I think you see a lot of that with this team getting better as games go on.
Yeah, no, definitely. All right. A couple weeks ago, you promised me if South Carolina beat Texas A&M and Vanderbilt, we could talk about the college football playoff a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
No, in all seriousness, before we take way too much time on this, the odds are very, very long. Obviously, if you end up somehow winning out in the regular season, you don't end up making the playoff. Those Alabama and LSU losses are going to sting quite a bit, because really, if you had just won one of those and you only are sitting at 2 losses right here, then the math is much more interesting. That said, South Carolina is currently at 21st in the college football playoff rankings. They are the second highest 3-loss team. Louisville is somehow at 19, even though I don't think that they have near as many quality wins. I guess they are coming off of a win at Clemson a couple weeks ago, which is sticking in everyone's mind or whatever. Above that, you have quite a few SEC teams, and we were trying to decide what the likelihood of 5 SEC teams getting into the playoff is, that would be the stretch. I mean, 4 feels pretty solid, but 5 seems like that's going to be really, really hard. You're going to need a lot of chaos. But let's look at the 5 SEC teams that are ahead of you. Texas is at number 3. Tennessee's at number 7. Alabama's at number 10. Ole Miss is at number 11. Georgia's at number 12. Texas A&M's at number 15. Now Texas A&M has to play Texas. That would if they lost that one, that would put them at 3 losses. You have the head-to-head over them. You like to think that you're somewhere in that range if that happens. Georgia plays Tennessee.
Tennessee this Saturday. Yep.
This week, yeah, that's a pretty big one. Ole Miss, it's hard to foresee a scenario where you jump them. I think
Florida and Mississippi State. They only have 2 losses right now anyway. Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Alabama. Sorry, I'm looking at the rest of their schedule.
Alabama has this week, and then it's Oklahoma and Auburn, I think.
Yeah, which maybe say Auburn. Who knows what kind of crazy stuff could happen there? But still, then at best, they're probably going to lose one of those games, and then you both have 3 losses. So that becomes kind of difficult. Tennessee's only got 1 loss. Maybe they could somehow lose to Georgia and Vanderbilt, and then so since you didn't play them, maybe there's an eye test thing.
Yeah, but then you lose your Georgia jump. Georgia only has 2 losses.
Right. So yeah, either way, the math gets very, very, very hairy very quickly, and that's not to mention all the other teams ahead of you that could get auto bids.
I will say
from other conferences or shake things up in that way. But go ahead.
Just because we're doing this, and for the sake of the conversation, to exhaust all outcomes, there is, and it might be eliminated probably will be eliminated before South Carolina kicks off on Saturday, but there is exactly one outcome where South Carolina can still make the SEC championship game with like a 6-way tie at 5-3 for second. You would and I'm reading everything you would need here. Besides, you'd have to beat Missouri, obviously, but you would need Arkansas to beat Texas, Florida to beat LSU. Those are both noon games Saturday, so if one of those doesn't happen, you're out before you kick. Tennessee to beat Georgia. That gets you to next week, where you would need. Here's where it starts to get a little weird. You need Auburn to beat A&M. You're going to need Florida to beat Ole Miss. You're going to need Texas or Kentucky to win at Texas. You're going to need Oklahoma to beat Alabama. You're going to need LSU to beat Vandy, and then going into the last week, if you somehow get Kentucky winning at Texas and Oklahoma beating Alabama and Ole Miss losing twice and everything else, you're still going to need Auburn to win the Iron Bowl, Oklahoma to win at LSU, Texas to beat A&M, and Vandy to beat Tennessee. For the sake of the conversation, I figured I would read that out. I would imagine by the time South Carolina is on the field Saturday, Texas will have beaten Arkansas in the noon window, and that'll be out.
Yeah. I do wonder just how much eye test is going to matter here, right? If you beat Missouri convincingly this week, like we said, that'll be your 3rd straight ranked win. And then you still have Clemson, who's currently at 20 in the college football playoff rankings, that you could, if you had a strong showing against, is there, some way to impress enough? But with the auto bids, you have at least 4 auto bids, right? Or 5 auto bids if you count the
5,
G5.
yeah.
So after your 5 auto bids, one of those is an SEC team. You only have 7 slots for 4 more SEC teams if you really, really are looking for anything.
Yeah.
Philip Harris says that is a lot. We need to happen for a chance.
Yeah, I think Philip, we both understand this is not going to happen. We're just having the conversation because
it's
6
fun.
and 3, and yeah.
And we're having this conversation with the slimmest window glimmer of hope or whatever in November, and it's been a long time since you could do that. So I do think that that's really interesting. To me, the big things, I think personally, I've seen a bunch of different people try to break this down over the last week or whatever. Some people seem to think it would be better if Texas A&M won the SEC because of the win. It looks better long term on the schedule. I see that, I guess, but also I think the more 3-loss teams you can get in there that you have a head-to-head win over or not a loss over, the better off you are. So I actually think you would rather see Texas A&M lose, Georgia lose, and then just hope that eye test wise they put you in over Georgia, which that seems like a really long shot just based on
I
prestige and stuff.
I think I kind of side with you. I think if we're talking about a 5-team SEC scenario, you need to be at least fifth in the SEC, or at least tied for fifth.
Right.
So I think you need to look at it from a standings perspective more than anything else.
Yeah, and real quick, just I mean, it's very similar to what I just read out for the college football playoff. Also, Philip Harris says that LSU ref game is seriously going to be the reason we may not get in. So happy with how the team has played this year, though. Yeah, me too, and I think that should be the focus. And yeah, that LSU game, if South Carolina were to win out in the regular season, that LSU and not make the playoff, that LSU game is going to go down in uh, Gamecock curse lore or whatever.
I do think for everything we're talking about, and I take it, that's only a conversation if you finish 9-3 and you're playing the team you've lost to for literally half a decade this weekend. Like, you got to go take care of business this weekend for you to actually go back to the LSU game, the Alabama game, anything like that.
Absolutely, yeah. Just real quick, and we'll move on from this. Here are your two lost teams ahead of you. LSU, who has a head-to-head against you, but
they're behind you right now in the rankings. Yeah,
exactly. So I to the point that we were just making about the refs and all of that, if it came down to one or the other, it does seem like the playoff committee is at least looking at that game as basically a draw, and then the way that South Carolina has been playing since then as better than the way LSU's been playing. But anyway, so LSU 2 losses, Missouri 2 losses. Well, they would get a third this week if you won, so that takes care of itself. Alabama 2 losses, Ole Miss 2 losses, Georgia 2 losses, and then A&M has 2 losses but only 1 in the SEC. So I guess root for all those guys to lose, and you keep winning, and a lot of other chaos to happen, and who knows, But it's probably going to be a lot more like at best you finish around 15th or so, which I still think would be a great season. I mean, the best season we've seen around here since 2013. And that's
my whole thing. I mean, I wrote it a little bit Saturday in kind of my follow story if you're at GamecockScoop.com from Nashville, but you got 7 9-win seasons in school history, and you've got 4 10-win seasons in school history. You got to win out to get to 9, or I guess win out without a bowl game to get to 9. You got to win out plus a bowl game to get to 10. But the way you're playing right now, that's feasible. That's realistic. I don't think anybody would say you can't beat Missouri, Wofford, Clemson, and I don't know, a Big Ten opponent probably that didn't make the playoff in a bowl game right now. But you got to go do it. And I think you can still look back at this as one of the best seasons in South Carolina football history, regardless of whatever arbitrary ranking a committee gives you. But you got to go win, and it starts this Saturday against, like I said, a team that's had your number for a while now.
Yeah, I mean, go back and listen to our preseason previews and stuff. I mean, this was a very tough schedule, and thus far, South Carolina has handled it. They've exceeded expectations every turn at the way that they've handled it. So, all right, real quick, give me your Mizzou prediction. I know you're a couple of days out from actually writing out the final preview and putting it down on paper, but what's your prediction right now?
Yeah, I'm just like I said last week going into it, I'm huge on benefit of the doubt. I think if you earn it as a football team, I have no problem picking you. It's why I did pick them last week. It's why I didn't pick them going into Kentucky, because if they hadn't shown it to me yet. I know they haven't beat Mizzou in a while, but this team, the way they're playing, has earned benefit of the doubt to me. And it's not even just about Drew Pine or Brady Cooks. I think I'd probably still pick up with Brady Cook playing. Working on the idea that I don't think Brady Cook plays. It might be closer game with him. I'm going to say South Carolina 27, Mizzou 13.
Okay, so you have them covering that.
I do. I think they're going to cover this.
And that's what you need, right? Going back really quickly to that conversation we were talking about, you probably need style points. I mean, that's what they used to call it back in the BCS era, right? So covering the spread would be big. I actually feel like it's going to have some ugliness to it. So I do have them winning too, but I don't have them covering. I'm going to say South Carolina 24, Missouri 14. So 10 points.
Okay. Should we do staff picks now? I just opened the sheet. I can fill you in.
Sure, yeah, I haven't even looked at them,
Okay.
so I'll be doing it now.
I think we talked about some of these games already doing the playoff conversation, but Texas favored by 13.5 at Arkansas. Razorbacks still need a win for bowl eligibility. Any chance they get it here, or Texas just go in Fayetteville and be the way better team?
It's at Arkansas.
Yeah.
I will say that Texas is going to win, but not cover. This feels like a spot where Arkansas will play well. I've also just they've played each other a few times the past few years or whatever to reignite the old rivalry or whatever.
Yep.
And I think it's
Southwest
always a
Conference.
little weird anyway. So yeah, it's gonna be close, but Texas pulls it out.
I think Texas covers. I've seen enough from their receivers. I've seen Arkansas not cover receivers, especially against Ole Miss and LSU. I think that's a mismatch. Give me the Horns to cover. Clemson favored by 10 at Pitt. Pitt's kind of gone off the rails the last couple of weeks. They've lost twice. Clemson still, I think their only path to the playoff would be winning the ACC. But now that Miami has a conference loss, they're still probably in the mix for an ACC where they need this game. What do you think? Clemson favored by 10 at Pitt.
I think they're going to win and cover. This feels like,
yeah, I'm with you.
I don't know, Clemson for the last decade, they'll lose a game here and there that they shouldn't, but they tend to take care of business throughout the rest of the season. I think they'll do so. And like you said, Pitt, who I was pretty excited about, has kind of fallen flat lately.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the juice is out for Pitt. I think Clemson's a better team, better defense. Go up there and handle it. A really fun Group of 5 game in the noon window, noon Eastern. Maybe if you're watching at your tailgates or whatever, Clemson's on a commercial. We've got 8-2 Tulane at 7-2 Navy. Tulane is favored by 7. What you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those classic service academy scenarios, right? Who scores first? Who gets to dictate the game? If Tulane scores early, gets up early.
Oh, I'm sorry. The number's 6.5 in our sheet here. 7 on ESPN, but that's a pretty important half point to mention.
Yeah. If Tulane scores early, gets up early, then I think they can run away with it. If Navy can dictate the game, then it's going to be a nail biter throughout. I'm going to pick Tulane to win and cover.
I think Navy covers. I don't think they're as bad as they played against Notre Dame. They just had some turnovers and the triple option shortened the game a little bit. But I think Tulane might be the best Group of 5 team not named Boise State. And if Boise did slip up somehow, Tulane would still have a chance to get into the playoff. So I think Tulane wins the game, but Navy covers. Steven still insists on picking one terrible game a week. This week, our selection is Florida Atlantic and Temple and Boca Raton. I'm pulling up I'm sorry, that game's in Philly. Temple's favored by 2.5. I don't know anything about either one of these teams other than they're both bad, and Steven gets some weird pleasure out of this. Do you have a thought?
Isn't FAU's coach someone
Tom Herman?
I would say someone that used to matter. Yeah, I'll pick Florida Atlantic, even though that is a tough road trip up to Philly, I guess. But I actually did watch a little bit of them versus USF or one of those other Florida teams. And they have a decent offense, so sure.
Yeah, I can go with that. I'm trying to look up these two teams' records right now just to see what we're actually getting into here and why this is on here. 2-7. Both teams are 2-7. So
yeah. I mean, okay. I think he tries to throw us off for sure. Has he updated the records from last week yet? I don't even know how I.
Yep. So I don't know what this means you did last week because I don't know what it was going into last week, but you are currently 66, 47, and 2 against the spread. That's still a pretty healthy lead. I'm in second against the spread now. I'm just a clip over 500 at 57, 56, and 2. So you're 9 ahead of me there.
You're catching me, yeah.
But I had a terrible start to the year, so over 500, I'll take that. You're still 2 games ahead of me straight up. You're 79 and 36. I'm 77 and 38. And that's 1 and 2 as well. So I'm over 500 against the spread. I didn't think I was going to get there after the first month.
I'm slowly regressing back to the mean. I think at one point I was at like 15 or 20 games over. So
yeah, you're still 19 over. I mean,
yeah, I'll take it. Any other ones left on the list?
Yeah, we got a few here. Not sure why this is here either. Notre Dame favored by 23 against Virginia. Games in South Bend. Notre Dame's chokeholded everybody since that Northern Illinois loss. They haven't played a tough schedule, but they've still blown out pretty much everyone they've played. Won by 50 last week. What do you think of? Can Virginia stay within 23 up there?
It's at Virginia?
No, it's at Notre Dame.
Oh. I'll pick Notre Dame to win and cover. If it was at Virginia, I was going to say maybe that's a weird game or whatever enough to keep it close, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how good Notre Dame is, but like I said, they've pretty much beat everyone they've played by like 30 since week 2. So if nothing else, I think they can cover. I mentioned Boise State a second ago. Big game in the Mountain West. That's first versus second, or maybe first versus third right now in the Mountain West standings. Boise State at San Jose State. Broncos favored by 13.5 in a game they need for their playoff chances.
I'm going to pick San Jose State to cover because I want that to happen. But
chaos.
Yeah,
that's
chaos.
Fair.
Which, by the way, we didn't even talk about this during the playoff thing, but I think so far 12-team playoff is a hit without seeing any games.
Yeah.
I've said that several times throughout the year, but the fact that there's still so many scenarios 3 weeks from the end of the season, this is fun. A lot.
I will say too,
and still care.
I don't think this would really affect South Carolina because there has to be a G5 team anyway. So it's more like Boise trying to stay ahead of like Tulane or Army than South Carolina. But I get what you're saying. I think Boise covers on the road. I think they were sloppy last week against Nevada, got away with it. I think they bounced back and played better this week. But San Jose State's pretty good. They got a good offense. They're already bowl eligible. So, all right, this is fun. A couple of those 2-loss teams kind of around South Carolina's neighborhood. Arizona State, Kansas State. It's at Kansas State, but Arizona State's running back, who's been great, Scatabo, is expected back from injury this week. K-State favored by 9.
And it's at K-State?
At K-State, but the running back's going to be back for ASU, or he's expected to be.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll pick Kansas State to win, but Arizona State to cover the 9.
Yep, same thought. Okay. That's going to be a good game. It's a night game, too. And South Carolina fans can watch that. It's 2 pretty good teams. Oregon, number 1 in the country, at Wisconsin. Night game at Camp Randall. Oregon favored by 14.5. We've seen Wisconsin pull weird upsets there before. I don't think so here. But what we talk about every week, team flying halfway across the country. Wisconsin stay within 14.5 here.
I'm going to pick Wisconsin to cover because of that. Although I think that did fail me for the first time last week. I can't remember exactly what it was, but there was a blowout in one of those scenarios last week. But yeah, so far this year, most of the time, the traveling team that has to travel 2 time zones has struggled a little bit. I still think Oregon wins, but I'll give Wisconsin the points.
Sure. Yep. And then last game here, other than South Carolina, which we already talked about, you know what it is. It's the big ABC night game. It's Tennessee at Georgia. Georgia favored by 9, and I think that's baking in Nico being in concussion protocol right now. This is a really tough game to call on Wednesday, not knowing if he's going to play. But we're here right now, so I guess you can still change your pick before Steven publishes this on Friday. But Georgia favored by 9 at home against a possibly Nico-less Tennessee.
Yeah, I'm going to assume he doesn't play just based on what I was reading today, but like you said, could still change. So I'll pick Georgia to win and cover that 9. But keep an eye on that injury report because if Nico plays, then I would still pick Georgia to win, but not cover.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just can't. I know Carson Beck's been bad, but I can't trust a backup quarterback on the road at night in Athens who hasn't really played much this year. That's just not realistic against an angry Georgia team after last week. So I'll pick Georgia to win and cover for now. We'll see if that changes. Okay, that's the staff picks. You want to do a little bit of basketball, or you just want to get out of here?
Yeah, give me just a quick. Obviously, probably a lot of people are still in football mode, so I haven't really been paying attention. If you haven't been paying attention, the men's basketball team lost their season opener to North Florida, which caused a lot of gnawing and gnashing of teeth among the fan base. But then we've kind of seen North Florida play several other games really close since then, and it seems like they're
Georgia Tech. by double digits. They played Georgia tight last night, even though they ended up losing in Athens.
Yeah, they're a pretty decent team. Definitely better than they were last year, where they were like 16-14 or whatever. So maybe that loss won't end up looking quite as bad by the time the season is over. They've bounced back and won back-to-back games against SC State and Towson. You were there last night. What are you kind of seeing as this team develops? Obviously, different looking team outside of Colin Murray Boyles, kind of several other newcomers from the portal and from the high school ranks that are trying to make an impact and I guess find their identity here in the early going. Do you think that that's kind of coming along in a way that they could still make some waves in the SEC, or are we expecting this team to underperform a little bit?
I'm not ready to make any grand statements either way. What I will say is I was encouraged by what I saw offensively last night. Obviously, you score 80 points. They win the game 80-54 last night against the not bad Towson team that won 20 games last year in the CAA. You score 80 points, you feel good about your offense in general, but I thought that was more kind of the idea of what they wanted to do on offense. It was a lot of the inside-out stuff. It was a lot of post-ups. It was Nick Pringle having by far his best game with a 3 last night. CMB took over. I mean, that's going to be a given against most teams you play against. But you're moving the ball well. He had 17 assists on 26 made field goals last night. And a lot of it, like I said, was the inside out. I think that's more what they want to do. So I feel better about the offensive identity maybe than I did this time last week. I'm having a real question with the rebounding. You lose the rebounding to North Florida. You gave up 15 offensive rebounds to a Towson team without a player over 6'9" last night. And I think this is just going to be something where your guards are going to have to be better. I think on the long list of things Talon Cooper was good at, he was a great rebounder for a guard. I don't know if you have a great rebounding guard on this team. Like I said, you lost it to North Florida. You didn't lose the rebounding battle last night, but you gave up way too many offensive rebounds against Towson. That's a concern. I think I don't know what you do about that. You can't change your roster, obviously, but I think there's not enough of a sample size. There's a sample size now to say that this team could struggle to rebound in SEC play.
Yeah, I mean, you do have some younger guys on the roster. Cam Scott, who has a body that could develop into a decent rebounder for a guard. But it's early, so. And then on the women's side, they've played 2 games, 2 pretty impressive wins already. You beat Michigan team in Vegas 68-62. Maybe felt like a slight underperformance, but you get out of there with a win in kind of a weird opening game scenario. And then on Sunday, you beat a ranked NC State team 71-57. Obviously, a team that you played in the Final Four last year as well. What are you seeing on the women's side? I think we talked a little bit about it last week. Just you don't have a Cardoso in there to just kind of, I guess, suck up all that, like those moments where you don't know what you want to do offensively, so you just throw it into her or whatever. But maybe you're trading off for a little more efficiency on the perimeter.
Yeah, I thought that was a much better game on the perimeter on Sunday against a really good NC State team. I think a team that's going to be in the top 10 most of the year. You shot the ball much better. Pow had her career high as a Gamecock. She scored 23. Full Wiley, I think, had 18, if I'm remembering correctly. And yeah, I don't know if you solved all your problems in that game, although I think you took a step. I think you kind of know this team's going to have to shoot well in games. I don't think they have the margin for error to have a bad shooting night that they did last season. Like you said, you could throw the ball to Cardoso if the outside shots weren't falling. I think you're still trying to figure out some depth right now. Tessa Johnson got a little banged up in that game. Sounds like she's going to be fine. But Miriam Dowd is still kind of getting her feet wet. Adele Tax coming off an ACL tear. She spent most of the game on the exercise bike on Sunday. So I think you're still just in a process feeling it out. And luckily for you, you've got 2 games this week against Coppin State and East Carolina. You should win by probably 100 points combined, and you can get yourself healthy, get yourself into some rotations before you play Clemson next week in the rivalry game, and then go to that tournament in Fort Myers.
Yeah, obviously we'll have a lot more basketball coverage as the football season kind of winds down.
We didn't even mention it, but a big opportunity for the men this week, going to Indiana Saturday.
Oh, wow. What time is that?
3 o'clock Eastern, so that's going to overlap with football.
Okay, well, we will definitely have some post-game coverage of that, but forgive us if we're locked in on the Mizzou game this weekend. But anyway, we will be back here on Sunday to talk about what happened in that Mizzou game, what happened in that Indiana game. In the meantime, you can go to GamecockScoop.com. We'll have plenty of other coverage. On Friday, I will have the full visitors list of all of the recruits that are expected to show up this weekend. Several official visitors already. A lot of them already committed to other teams, so some names on Flip Watch that'll be interesting to check out. Thanks to Philip Harris for commenting on YouTube. If you don't follow us on YouTube, go subscribe. We are at Rivals Gamecock on all social media, and we will be back here soon with the GamecockScoop.com podcast.